The month of June marks a full year since our last US Highpoint. Between the short 3-month access window for these mountains and COVID-19, we just have not had the time to get one done in what has honestly become a long time. So this week, we took all of the necessary precautions, given the current pandemic going on, to safely tick a new one off the list. And it was a big one. We started off in Leadville, Colorado, spending the night at a respectable 10,150 feet above sea level, just to get acclimated before hiking Mount Elbert, Colorado's highest point at 14,439 feet. In the morning, we got an early start, waking up at 5 and hitting the 8-mile, 5,000 vertical foot trail at 6 a.m. So at this point, we finally broke above the tree line, which is about halfway to the top, both in terms of elevation gain and in terms of distance. So we were feeling good. But what we didn't know was that we were headed into the much harder half. Hey guys, so that was a pretty weird ending to the video, pretty abnormal. So I wanted to say a couple things. I'm back in Houston. It's been a few days since the video that you just watched. I'm working on editing it right now. Actually, just finished except for this. And I just wanted to say a couple things that this video doesn't really fully convey the story of what actually happened that day. So I wanted to kind of just make it complete. And this is really the only way I can. So there's a couple things I wanted to say. So the first thing is, we really weren't prepared for what happened on Monday. This was a really tough hike, and in a lot of ways we weren't ready for it. The biggest is we were not acclimated to the altitude. We spent one night at 10,000 feet in Leadville. Not enough. Up towards the top of that mountain was by far the most mountain sick I've ever been, the most delirious I've ever been. I was definitely starting to lose it up there. I actually kind of barely remember what even happened except for the footage that we just watched together. I was losing it for sure, just because I was so mountain sick, altitude sick. And so that was a huge mistake, not acclimating more in Leadville. My legs were okay, like they were able to make it, but like my head, like I just felt like, I was really pushing it up there in terms of getting enough oxygen to my brain. So that's a huge thing. Really make sure you're acclimated when you're going to start at 10,000 feet and climb 5,000 more during a hike. You gotta be ready. The trailhead of the hike has to feel like 0 feet above sea level to you, and that was not the case. So big mistake on our part. We also didn't have enough water or food, but that's part of it because we needed way more water than we thought because it took us so long because of the altitude sickness. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. The next thing is really interesting also though, which is, in my mind, the story of that day is defined by something that the cameras didn't capture at all, which is that on our way down, after I put all my cameras and stuff away, we had the craziest windstorm I've ever seen. I mean, even right off the bat, the wind was like 60, 70 miles an hour, like really hard to stay standing. Like we had our poles and you'd have to like stake them down in front of you, turn your back into the wind. And even then it was truly, truly difficult to stay on your feet. And then it somehow got worse and it followed us the whole way down. So it was like 2.5 miles until tree line, obviously, because then you're protected, of direct wind. Had to be 100 miles an hour. Like, I live in Houston. I've stayed here for a hurricane, and I know what it's like to be outside in a hurricane. Not like the absolute brute force of the hurricane, but like, when you're here, you're curious. You go outside during the hurricane. These were like hurricane winds. Like, I mean, 2 separate times I was 100% off the ground. I think the wind would get underneath my backpack and it would just pull me up off the ground. 2 separate times, which is dangerous because you're on these rocks and, basically you end up having to take 5 steps, and then when the wind gusts, you get into the fetal position on the ground so that you don't get blown off the side of the mountain, and then you get up, take 5 steps. Most tiring and by far most insane display of like natural weather event that I've ever seen. So I feel like I had to tell you guys that. Maybe get out there earlier. I don't really know how you can avoid that. Make sure you know what the weather's going to be like. But whatever you have to do to avoid a windstorm like that, do it, because one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. So yeah, that's all I got. That's the complete story now of what happened. So I feel like it's all kind of, you can put a bow on it now. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. That's number 37 out of 50. So see you in the next one.